Welcome to Dead Man Talking. Tonight's story is a short but chilling story. As ever, please do let us know what you thought down below in the comments box. Please do like and share. It really does help build the channel and our community further. And of course, don't forget to hashtag TeamFEAR. And so, with that aside, let's get into tonight's story, entitled Animal Control is a Dangerous Job. Let's get straight into that. I'm an animal control officer for a rural county. I cover an area that has isolated communities of people who don't trust outsiders. I say this because after this call, I couldn't get anyone to talk to me. In dealing with these communities, I have seen some rather strange calls. One such call was made by a woman whose family had moved into one of these places, and she and her husband were doctors, and since rural doctors are hard to come by, her and her husband wanted to fill that need. And for the two of them, though, it was a bit of a culture shock. A problem that doctors ran into was the number of animals that were allowed to run loose. This triggered several calls from the woman to me about aggressive dogs. There wasn't much I could do about the dogs because every time I showed up, the dogs had been hidden. The last call I received from her would also be one of the most terrifying calls. I was called once again about an aggressive animal, but this time she wasn't sure if it was a dog or not. She had made a house call to a family that lived at the end of a long dirt road. When she got there, everything was normal, as much as it could be under such circumstances. It was when she stepped into the house that things got weird. She told me that while she was doing a checkup on the children, she heard a growling noise coming from behind a wall. When she asked the family about it, they quickly escorted her out of the house. She called me when she got home because she thought it might have been a mountain lion or some other big cat. I was skeptical because our area is known for bears and no mountain lions have been spotted in years. I didn't tell her this though because she sounded upset and off. I told her I'd check it out regardless, and once she gave me the address, we said our goodbyes. I looked up the address and saw that it would take me at least 2 hours to get there. And this house was located in one of the remotest parts of my county. I planned for a morning drive so that I would get there before it got too hot. We were heading into summer, and I'm a big man that doesn't handle heat very well. I hate having to hike through the forest when it's hot out, and because of where this place was located, I wouldn't be able to drive up to the house. Bright and early the next morning, I loaded up my truck and headed out. I stopped by the gas station for some coffee and gas. With that done, I headed out of town and on my way to the middle of nowhere. And I got to the dirt road about 30 minutes early, and since it was still early, I stopped to stretch my legs and to use the bathroom. I was surrounded by forest with the closest house over a mile away, and so I wasn't worried about being caught with my pants down. With that need taken care of, I used some hand sanitizer and headed out again. The doctor had warned me that the road was poorly maintained, and I knew immediately that she hadn't been exaggerating. The first pothole I hit, I thought it was going to tear off my front tire. I slowed down farther until I was going about 2 miles an hour. Even going at that speed, I felt like I was in a paint-shaking machine, and by the time I got to the end of the road, my teeth were rattling. I gratefully stopped when I reached the end and sat for a minute, waiting for my insides to settle back where they were supposed to be. Then I grabbed my gear and stepped out of my truck. I had brought some water, a gun, and a tranquilizer. If there was a wild animal, I didn't know how I was going to catch it by myself. The hope was that it was another false call and I wouldn't have to worry about it. Right now, though, my biggest concern was getting to the house without getting lost. I looked around and, like when I stopped for a break, all I could see was trees. Other than that, there was something that felt off about the forest surrounding me. I felt the hairs on the back of my neck standing up, and regardless of how warm it was, a shiver crawled its way down my back. I frowned at the feeling. In my line of work, listening to your instincts could save your life, and I almost got back into the truck and left. I took a deep breath and shook the feeling off. There was no reason for me to panic, and I told myself I was being ridiculous. I made my way to the faint trail I could see between some trees. Once I was there, I set my GPS so that I could find my way back to my truck. With that taken care of, I started on my walk. The doctor had told me the house was about half a mile from the end of the dirt road. As I walked down the path, I became aware of the lack of sound. Usually, I would hear birds, bugs, or animals moving through the underbrush. Now there was nothing to hear except my footsteps. I kept looking around me, hoping to spot any sign of life, but I was out of luck. All I could see was the sun shining down through the trees, and I could feel the temperature rising as the morning wore on. Then as I got closer to the house, I could hear the sound of children playing and animals calling out. I felt myself sag in relief at the sounds of life after such a quiet walk. The relief didn't last long though, because as I pushed through the trees into a clearing, I saw that there was no one there. I froze, looked around. I could see paddocks and an old barn that looked like it was about to fall. Way off from that, I saw the house in question. It was dilapidated and much like a barn. It looked like a stiff breeze was all that it needed to bring it down. By now, I was starting to wonder if I'd been sent on a wild goose chase. This looked like nothing the doctor had described. I swallowed and forced my feet to move. "This is Animal Control. Is anyone home?" I called out as I moved farther into the clearing. The silence was my only answer. I moved closer to the paddock, and I jumped back with a small cry as laying in the paddock was a freshly dead cow. But not just any cow. This one had 3 massive claw marks running down its side. On top of that, its eyes were bulging out along with its tongue. The cow looked like it had been choked and then clawed to pieces. Now I don't know about you, but I can't think of anyone strong enough to choke out a cow. I left the paddock and turned back towards the house. I decided that I would leave the barn because it looked too dangerous for me to go into. "Hello? Is anyone here?" I called out again. I knew if I was smart, I would turn tail and run. I couldn't leave without making sure someone didn't need my help. Though, with the damage to the cow, I was worried about what had happened to the family that lived here. If in fact anyone lived here at all. I reached the rotting front porch and I stopped before climbing the stairs. The front door was hanging on by one hinge and the windows were broken. It looked like no one had been in here for many years. "Hello? This is Animal Control. Is anyone home?" I called out for the 3rd time. Of course, I didn't get an answer, and I was about to call off the search before I could turn around. I heard a faint cry like that of a child. "Is someone there?" I hollered as I cautiously climbed the stairs. I heard the sound again, and it sounded like it was getting closer. I pulled out my flashlight and shone the light in through the open doorway. All I could see was debris from the forest and a thick layer of dust on the floor. I stepped closer to the door, and the porch let out an alarming creak. I froze, but the floor held. By now I was calling myself an idiot for not leaving already. The cry came again, and so I forced myself to step through the door. Inside it looked like the family had simply disappeared. Everything was still in its place. In the corner of the room there was even dinner sitting on the dining table. The air in the house smelled of decay and mould. As I walked deeper into the room, it was completely quiet in the house now. All I could hear was my increasing heart rate and the air moving in and out of my lungs. This quiet didn't sound natural to me, and my uneasiness was growing. I decided that now would be the good time to pull out my gun. If something tried to grab me, I hoped I would be fast enough to defend myself. Watching where I stepped, I moved farther into the house, trying to find the source of the original noise. The house only had 1 story. The kitchen, dining room, and the living room took up 1/2 of the house. I stopped outside the kitchen door and glanced in to see if anything was waiting for me. The kitchen was like the rest of the house, with the remains of supper sitting on the stove. I didn't go into the room because there was a hole in the middle of the room. Moving on, I found the first bedroom across from the kitchen. And from the decoration in this room, it was a child's room. And not seeing anything of interest, I moved on past the next kid's room to the largest bedroom at the end of the hall. I stepped into this room, and the first thing I saw was blood smeared across the wall behind the bed. It was in the shape of large claw marks, and I tensed at the second sign of violence. I looked around the room, and my eyes slid across a shadow in the corner of the room. When it struck me that something was there, I brought the flashlight up, hoping that I was seeing things. No luck, because sitting in the corner was an animal I'd never seen before. It was as tall as me sitting down, and on each of its front feet were 3 massive claws. The muscles of the front legs looked strong enough to strangle a hippo, much less a cow. The creature gave a low cry, and I went cold. It sounded like a child crying. I started backing towards the door, and the creature stood up. I could see instantly that I was right about its size. I watched in horror as it opened its mouth and started panting. It had rows of massive teeth, and even from where I was, the smell, it was horrible. Its back legs were as muscled as its front legs, and I wondered how I could outrun this thing if I had to do so. I took another step back, and the creature stepped forward. It felt like some kind of strange dance as I walked backwards, and the creature matched my steps. I brought my gun up and leveled it onto the creature. It hadn't made any threatening moves towards me besides playing follow the leader. I had a feeling, though, that it was waiting for me to let my guard down. At the sight of my gun, the creature lunged for me, and I quickly fired off 2 shots. The creature fell back with a deafening roar. I used this opportunity to turn and run, not taking time to find out where I hit the creature. I knew I had wounded it, and so I was hoping it was enough for me to get away. As I ran towards the front door, I prayed to every god I could think of that the floors would hold, and somehow I made it to the front door, and from behind me I could hear the creature trying to get up, and it was making these awful whimpering and crying noises. It sounded so much like a child in extreme pain that I almost turned back. I called myself an idiot and took off running again. If you've ever seen a fat man run, it isn't pretty and not very quiet. That day I found my inner track star and I ran as hard as I could to the safety of the trees. I was hoping that I had enough of a head start. I was also hoping that the creature didn't have a good sense of smell, because when a man my size sweats, everyone within 100 feet could smell me. I found a place to hide, and I waited anxiously for the creature to find me. After 10 minutes, I grew tired of hiding. I clutched my gun in my right hand and cautiously I stepped out of my hiding place. I looked around, but the coast was clear. I started towards my truck, expecting to be attacked at any moment. As I walked, I could have sworn that there was something behind me. Every time I checked, though, there was nothing there. I still jumped at every sound, and I was constantly checking behind me. Although it had been quiet when I first walked down this path now, it sounded like every branch in the forest was cracking. Somehow, I made it to my truck unmolested. When I stopped to catch my breath near my truck, I saw to my horror that there were 3 long claw marks down the side of the driver's door. I quickly fumbled my keys out of my pockets, something I should have done already, I know. I managed to get the door open without dropping the keys, and once the door was opened, I scrambled inside. I was desperate for some water, but before I could reach for my thermos, I saw movement. I looked up and saw the creature was watching me. I swallowed a scream at the sight. I felt that the creature was playing with me. It started moving towards me, and I frantically turned the truck on. I jerked it into reverse and then made the fastest turnaround I've ever done in my life. As I started forward, I saw the creature stop. The last thing I saw in my rearview mirror was an elderly man with 2 bullet holes in his chest. I almost ran into a tree at the sight, but I wasn't stopping to ask questions. I made it back home in record time. I ran into my house and placed a call to the doctor that had sent me out to the house. I desperately wanted answers, and she was the only one to have them. Instead of the woman doctor, a confused, elderly woman answered the phone. I asked for the doctor, and the elderly woman told me that she had lived in her house for 50 years. She also told me that the phone number I called had been hers for the past 20 years. I apologized for bothering her and hung up the phone. I was now confused and terrified. I made some more calls, but everyone I talked to said that they didn't know who I was talking about. I don't know who I had been talking to, but it wasn't a doctor wanting to help some unfortunate people. I never went back to that house. Some instinct was telling me that that was why the creature had let me go. It wanted me to bring more people to investigate, and therefore that would be more food for him. I had no intention of doing that. For one, who would believe me? And 2, I may be a bit stubborn, but I'm not stupid. I had gotten away once and I doubt I would get away again. I have since left that job, and all I've been able to figure out was that the creature could be related to a Wendigo. I'm probably wrong though, because the only similarity I could find between the two was the eating of people. And so that's the story of my most terrifying call, and the reason I left a fairly easy job. And for me, no job is worth getting eaten by some mystical creature, even if my fat self would have kept that thing fed for months. Wow. Awesome short story there, quite chilling, by the wonderful LsCreativeCrochet. Thank you ever so much for allowing me to narrate your wonderful story on the channel. Guys and girls, you know the drill. As ever, please do let us know what you thought down below in the comments box. Please do like and share. It really does help build the channel and our community further. And of course, don't forget to hashtag TeamFEAR. If you have a story you'd like to share with us here on the show, whether it's true or fictional, please do get it over to my email or the website, which is dmtforesterfear@gmail.com, or of course www.dmtforesterfear.com. I hope you're all well and happy and having a fantastic week. And above all, remember, be safe, not sorry.